Welcome to the Canadian Business Quarterly podcast, where we speak with Canada's most influential industry leaders on the business and economic development issues taking place across the country. You can stay up to date with all of our content, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.
Today's guest is Chris Perkin, CEO of Altasciences. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So firstly, why don't you take us through the background of Altasciences?
Sure. Altasciences actually started off as a different company, Algorithm Pharma, which was a fairly small clinic and laboratory, which was focused entirely on generic drugs. When I joined in 2010, it was facing significant price competition out of India. And we started transforming the company by repositioning it as an innovator drug testing clinic. And part of that was we had made our first acquisition, which was an innovative drug clinic in Kansas in 2013. And that's when we started to develop the idea for a full-service integrated early development CRO. In 2017, we had new owners, and under them, we added a preclinical CRO, which was a key piece in that development plan, and a CDMO, which was also a differentiator. And in 2021, we had another set of new owners, and they bought that on the basis of this, showing this was a viable concept. And we added two more preclinical facilities and a clinic in Los Angeles. We also did some significant organic changes, built large and small molecule bioanalysis. We built project management services that needed to provide the integrated comprehensive early drug development solution that we envisaged. And we also implemented cross-selling, rethought the org chart to ensure our vision of integration was mirrored by the reporting and responsibilities at the senior level. And then in 2019, we changed to the Alta name and positioned ourselves as a solution provider for early stage drug development.
Right. And could you give us a brief explanation of your journey that led you to become part of Altasciences?
Sure. It's been a long journey. 50 years ago, I was actually an animal technician. And my first job after graduating was as study director in toxicology in England. And I actually stayed in preclinical CRO or preclinical testing until 2010 in both CROs and in the pharmaceutical industry. And in 1988, when I arrived in Canada, I started gradually moving up the seniority ladder, and until the Montreal CRO where I was working was acquired by Charles River Laboratories in 2004. And for the next 6 years, I managed all their North American facilities, and we built one in China. Having worked my way up, I think it's helped me to develop a style that is very collaborative and trusting, and I'm a great believer in communication. We've built Altasciences in the belief that you do things for and with staff, not to them.
Can you run us through exactly what the CRO and CDMO industry is and your overall vision for it?
Yeah, this industry is really replaces internal capacity in both large and small drug development companies. So it can be the multinationals, it can be a little startup. And by providing the in-depth services, which are expensive to acquire on your own, we're able to help them to take that drug from the research phase, the early screening phase, right the way through the regulated requirements, which are very stringent in any country, to be able to get through the clinical trials and ultimately we hope to a marketing application. Our goal is to become the solution for outsourced early phase drug development. An early phase, I mean from the time that the lead candidate is identified through to the studies which show it actually works in a small group of patients. And it doesn't matter for us whether it's one study or a whole program. We aim to provide a simple, integrated outsourcing solution with a focus on customer service that removes the need for multiple service providers during the early stages of drug development. And that's our specialty. We've put together pieces that are traditionally offered by separate CROs. No one else to date has done that, and in an integrated fashion.
So what exactly do you think that you're doing differently at the moment that allows you to have this sort of success and differentiate yourself from potential competitors?
Yeah, and that was really part of the original idea that we started putting together in 2013. We tried to approach early drug development as the client approaches it, rather than the way that a provider would approach it. So it's assigning a single program manager to a client just to manage that whole program for them across Altasciences, centralized scheduling tools that actively manage multiple studies, no matter which facility or in which discipline or capability is involved. We built a tool to ensure the client only has to tell us once. It's identified by clients as a major issue. It doesn't matter how many studies they're doing or how many facilities or departments are involved. We actively cross-sell our services to become more of a problem-solving solution. If we put that together, we can actually reduce early development time by 35 to 40% and reduce costs by performing all those services in a single integrated CRO. And integrating those pieces has been built into Alta since day one. We've never believed, and I still don't believe, that you can back engineer or retrofit integration. You either have it as part of your DNA and culture, or you don't.
So I think you're already talking about this, but I was going to ask how you anticipate, how these changes will affect biopharma and how that will affect you, operationally, how you move forward. Can you tell us just a little bit more or dig into that a little bit deeper?
Yeah, well, before we even started implementing this idea, we did a lot of road testing. We talked to a lot of clients. We talked to marketing firms. We had surveys done. And there was a lot of interest, but a lot of skepticism, because the big answer is, why has no one done this before? And when there was a lot of support for it. From day one, when we started putting this together, again, there was a lot of interest. But when you offer something unique in an industry that's not really known for its innovation and out-of-the-box thinking, you get a lot of questions, which result in hesitancy. And then along came COVID. And with travel difficult or even impossible, and increasing supply chain issues, because supply chains were traditionally pretty long, spanning continents, the single CRO solution became much more attractive. And we've seen and continue to see a significant increase in clients interested in using the multiple capabilities under one CRO banner, and with everything that integration means in that, the ease of moving around, particularly in those small to mid-sized biopharmas.
And so what's happening at a more broader industry level within pharmaceuticals at the moment?
Well, increasingly, it's being driven by the small to mid-sized biopharma for early stage development.
Okay.
Since the so-called patent cliff, when the big pharma realized that shots on goal wasn't working, and just acquiring the small startup biotechs, biopharmas, wasn't resulting in a sustainable solution. They now tend to leave them to do that early development, take it to proof of concept, and then they will start to scoop those out. And it's working very well. It's a very synergistic relationship. New drugs also are getting much more complex to evaluate. There's new molecules, new indications, new mechanisms, and it becomes more and more difficult for larger CROs to maintain the infrastructure needed to assess the tolerance and safety, which is the key for early stage development. So later stage development is becoming increasingly separate in the CROs, putting separate in CROs. So the larger CROs really in late stage development. So this early stage development is taking a different role, or appearing to be a different role within that whole organization.
So what do you think the future holds for Altasciences in the medium to long term then?
Well, we've got very active owners who are very supportive of this model and quite excited by it, actually. So we have a growth plan, keep building the capabilities, both by acquisitions and organically, and capacity to enhance that integrated full service early drug development models, adding more capabilities, more geographical reach. And part of that is that we're already looking at moving into Europe, and we're actively pursuing that at the moment. And we will continue to focus on that lead candidate selection to proof of concept. Everything that we add will plug on to that. Every client that comes to Altasciences is potentially a client for every one of our services. Whether they're using them or not, they are potentially a client. Since 2020, we've done 4 acquisitions. We added what used to be Alliance Contract Pharma, WCCT Global, Calvert Labs, Sinclair Research, and there's more in discussion. What we have developed over the years as well is a very elegant integration process that identifies and realizes true synergies really quickly by establishing cross-functional teams from day one for each department to evaluate and adopt best practices. And I should say they're not necessarily Altas practices. We've actually, many of the tools that I mentioned earlier, we actually found in companies that we've added. And by synergies, I also mean that 1 + 1 = 3. It is not cost-cutting and headcount reductions.
So before we finish up today, is there anything else that you might like to add or have not had a chance to address during our conversation?
Well, for over 30 years now, I could never actually understand the logic behind early drug development being so siloed in each piece separate. As far as a drug is concerned, it's a single pathway from lead candidate selection to proof of concept. And when we got past the patent cliff, and there'd been this reinvention and reevaluation of the role that large pharma would play, this became a significant gap in the market. It was exacerbated by the larger CROs getting larger, and that decimated that whole mid-level CRO tier that traditionally serviced their small to mid-sized biopharma. I and a number of other senior operations, scientific and BD staff, that's when we decided it was our opportunity. The unique mix and range of CRO experience in our management team has made it not only possible, but it's created a significant barrier to entry. And that's really allowed us to grow significantly to date and will enable us to continue to do so in the future.
Well, Chris, thanks very much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
This has been a production of the Canadian Business Quarterly, a division of Romulus Rising Proprietary Limited. All rights reserved. You can stay up to date with the Canadian Business Quarterly, including our publications, newsletters, and podcasts by visiting www.thecbq.ca and clicking on subscribe.